Hello and welcome to today's show. It's a live show. I've got a special guest who will be joining us. I'm going to bring him in, and he is none other than Scotty McFarlane from the DM's Craft. Hello, Scotty.
Hey, guys. Thanks, Guy, for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. So, for those of you who do not know DM Scotty, Scotty is an amazing crafter. I have spoken about his videos before on the channel. You know, tell us a little bit about your channel. About what you do.
Yeah. So I take mostly cheap materials and make terrain for my RPG games. So you could use it for war games too, but I mostly concentrate on RPGs because that's what I play for the most part.
That's right. There we go. Absolutely. And we can find you on YouTube. It is youtube.com/the DM's Craft. Perfect. So there we go. So if you haven't seen his videos, go have a look. I can't see how you haven't. We've looked at a whole bunch of the different videos and stuff that's out there. This week it's looking at using LEDs and an LED controller specifically, which is super cool. Anyway, yeah, so we've got a full show for you today. We've got DM Scotty joining us, so he's going to be answering some of your questions. We're going to be talking about his Kickstarter as well, which we spoke about last week. We're going to catch up on that. We're going to do your questions and answers, of course, getting through those, and we are definitely going to do creative writing this week. For the last 2 weeks, I have run out of time. This week, though, in honor of DM Scotty, we've got something that I think will stretch your little grey cells and make you think slightly out of the box. Questions are already coming through. I don't know why OBS is not putting them into the thing with the thing. Maybe if I close that, maybe it's gone. I don't know where it's gone. It's supposed to be there. Anyway, I will figure that one out. In the meantime, we're going to go to some questions. It's supposed to be there. Anyway, I'll figure it out later on. We're going to go to some questions. The first question that's come through is from White Tiger 225. Question: I had to end an hour early due to stomach ache. Well, that's a disappointment. My players were disappointed. How do I make it up to them? We play online, so no food gifts, sadly. Yeah, food bribery is always a good one. What do you do if you have to end a session early? Scotty, is it just, I'm sorry?
I mean, it happens. I mean, people get sick or they have other, an obligation comes up or an emergency, and, we have the adulting thing to do. So, I think most people are adult about it and understand. So I wouldn't worry about, having to make it up. But if you can, it's always nice to give your DM or GM a gift, that kind of thing, or whatever, if you want to, chip in or something for something, that would be nice. Maybe chip in and get them a book or something, or something fun. I don't know.
That's not a bad idea. Absolutely. I'm going to go for the cheap option and say give your players a magical item that will prevent stomach ache from affecting their party for a while. I would do that perhaps. But it does happen. It really does happen. And for example, my game this week, I'm playing my game with my patrons. I see there are a couple of them maybe in the chat, and I realized I've double booked. And it's me being absolutely stupid and going, whoa, time zones, I can't use it as an excuse forever. I've been in Japan for 2 years now. So it really is just about apologizing and say, look, can we move it? Can we do this? Can we do that? So there we are. Right. If you are going to be asking questions, if you're new to the channel, and I see a lot of new names in the channel. So if you are new to the channel, please put the word question in caps in front of your question so that it pops out. You'll see some of the guys that have been around for a while have done that. If you are new, please put that in there. I see Christopher Knight saying DM Scotty is a legend. Yes, we agree. We
Thank you. I
agree.
appreciate that.
Okay, there we are. I used your purple worm video to make one myself as my first craft, says Darth Struticus. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Do you answer questions from chat, says Jerry Barsenius? Yes, I do. Please put the word question in front, and if I miss your question, please ask it again. Spam it until I see it or until the Twitch stream is over. And then ask it again next week, because these shows are every week. Okay, so one more question. James Tension. I must get those right. It's always a challenge when you're doing these things live. James Tension says, option opinion on player-made homebrew. Items, classes, and spells. What do you do, Scotty? Do you allow homebrew?
I do if it makes sense in the game. If it makes sense for what's happening in the story, what's happening with the character. You got to be careful about kind of, min-maxing and that kind of thing to just bend the rules to make it something that's too powerful or whatever. But if it fits in the story, and sometimes they need to give a little bit on abilities and that kind of thing, because something might be just too powerful for your game. It may not be too powerful for someone else's game, or it may work in someone else's game, but it may not quite fit in your game. It may make a character too powerful or change some dynamic that is set up in the game. So yeah, I think between the two of you, you can come up with a good compromise. I always find that works for me.
Absolutely. And I think the pitfall that I suffer from frequently as a player says, oh, can I use this homebrewed this or that or the next thing, and you read it and you go, yeah, that looks pretty cool, that looks fine, and then 10 levels later and suddenly this homebrew has evolved into this mega monster and you're going, what do you do now? It can be a challenge, and that is when you then take the player aside and say, listen, we've got to figure out a balance here, because there has been a creep in power which was not anticipated 6 months ago, so how do we handle that? As an example, in the Descent into Avernus game that I'm running on the D&D channel, one of the characters came to me and said, listen, there's a belt of dwarf strength, I think it is, or dwarf constitution, which when you put it on, your constitution improves, but you grow a beard. That's part of the thing. Could she have one which was elvish dexterity, and when you put it on, it was a belt, you got pointed ears? And I went, well, I think that's pretty cool. I don't think that's too much of a problem. But I now need to be very aware that that does change the character to look like an elf, and so in the future it might become a thing, but I don't think it will. But it was something cool, and the reason why they did it was they said, well, there just is no elvish equivalent. Elves have got cloaks of environmental protection and boots of striding and all those kinds of things, but they don't have anything that deals with dexterity. So yeah, absolutely. Yes, we're going to go for another 3 minutes on questions, and there's one here. Crusade of Ashes says, any suggestion on selling the idea of a one-shot to players who are used to a different system? It's a tough one, it really is, and different systems bring in all kinds of things, and I know I'm certainly old enough to remember when it was only 3.5, actually it was only 2nd edition, and 3.5 D&D came out, and I went, bah, we don't need 3.5, 2nd is perfect. And then 3.5 came out, and I said, we'll never change. And then Pathfinder came out, and I went, 3.5, what a shambles, now I'm on Pathfinder. And life goes on. DM Scotty, do you find that? Do you guys system shift, or you sort of your groups, do you stay with what you know?
I found that most of my groups really like 5e, so, and I'm very comfortable with it. I really like the system, so that's good. But I love playing other systems. I really love other player systems. I love playing other systems, and I try to talk my players into playing other systems, other games, and we'll get a one-off going. It's usually not that hard because it's not a huge time investment if they get a one-off, and sometimes when they play that one-off they find, oh, I really like this system, let's do a campaign or a mini campaign or something, which is kind of evolved from a one-shot. Maybe it's supposed to be a one-shot, but they ended up liking the system and wanting to play more. So a one-shot kind of gives them, it's not a huge commitment from their part. So, unless they're kicking and screaming and just don't want to, don't want to change systems, most reasonable people will agree, okay, we'll do a one-shot, and see what it's like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would try to pitch it. Definitely.
Okay, that's a good one. Absolutely, and we've got something exciting coming up in October, where we are going to be launching a new series on the channel, and it's called Game Masters Play, and that's where I invite a bunch of game masters to come and play at the table, and we do play new systems. We play different systems, and then we review them, and we do them in 4 videos, and then one of the videos is quite literally how do you adopt this game, and why would you want to play this game. So part of that is, okay, so it's got a new cool mechanic, or it's got a this, or it's got a that, and that you would then pitch onto your players saying, well, this is what people are saying about it, this is why it's different, this is why it's cool. And I think choosing a system is always about, is it going to make the game more entertaining, or is it just being done for the novelty factor? So that's how I usually pitch it when I have new players, or when players come to me and say, oh, we want you to play this new system. I go, well, why or what does that system do that I can't do already with the systems that I know? So that's a very complicated question, actually, when you start to unpack it. But it does segue quite nicely into something that you are doing, DM Scotty, which is your Kickstarter, because your Kickstarter is not system based. I'm just going to bring up the Kickstarter quickly. So there you can see it, the North Road, a fantasy RPG campaign book and PDF. It is 12 adventures, 4 quick quests, which I love, and it is system neutral. You can see it there, system neutral for any level. There's just a whole bunch of stuff in here. There's some videos, of course. We can see the beautiful stuff that DM Scotty has made, all these wonderful things. I want to just play in one of his games just so I get to play with all the toys. I think they look absolutely stunning. So yes, there's all of this kind of stuff going on. If you want to back it, it's got 7 days left. They're almost there. So let's get on there. Unfortunately, my Kickstarter's decided that Japan is where I live, so it shall show me these things in Japan, and I cannot figure out how to change that. So yeah, they've got a couple $1,000 Australian dollars to go to get this. So be one of the backers and join them in the next 7 days to fund this thing. I love the artwork as well. So tell us, why system agnostic?
I find that sometimes when people write modules, they think of the system first, and making the module interesting or the story second, right? So I figure that if you make the story first, you create the story first, then it's really easy to just add the system on to, make stats for whatever monsters and that kind of thing. Because I'm running it right now for my group, some of my college friends, and they really wanted to play D&D, and I'm like, well, why don't we play the campaign? So I'm playing it and totally running it in 5e, and the system doesn't have any stats. We do have one module on our website that does have D&D stats to kind of get you started, but the rest of the book will not have stats, and I really haven't found that to be a problem. If you have any experience as a DM, it's easy to go on. It's easy to find stats, replace things with stats, give something a power, because we describe the monsters and people, like what abilities they would have. So it's really easy to translate that to a game format if you have any kind of experience with an RPG. So it's not hard, and I like the fact that you can really. It doesn't feel like, oh, I've taken a 5e module and I've made it for Numeria. You know what I'm saying?
Right, absolutely.
It's like that's the problem.
Yes.
So you can, So that resolves that kind of problem where it just feels like another systems game that I've ported in.
Yes, I agree, and I like the idea of approaching it that I'm not worried about the system constraints. I'm looking at the story, and then that the system needs to fit. And for us, that is also one of the key things in that Game Master Plays, which, like I said, it launches in October. That's one of the things I'm specifically looking for. One of the questions we ask is, does the system allow for you to do almost anything? Because there are some systems that are very, very restrictive. So if you look at second edition D&D, and I can talk about this because it's a fact. If your character did not have their weapon or non-weapon proficiency, they just couldn't do it. There was no workaround. There was nothing along those lines. So there is that sort of situation. The Lone Wolf system from Cubicle 7, again, I've reviewed that one. I love that one. They also had a, if you don't have, you can't do. But if you do have, you can do. So it's just a design choice. It's not necessarily bad. It's just something that happens. All right, so there we are. More questions. So many questions this week. Oyasumi says, I'm writing out a campaign. I'm not strict on keeping the story on track, and I'd like everyone to have input with it. However, how do I get out of writer's block? Okay, well, now, interesting. There is a video on my channel coming out, I think it's next week, or the week after, called How to Get Out of Writer's Block. And hopefully it will inspire you. And I'm not going to reveal exactly too much of what's in there in terms of one of the methods. There are many ways of getting out of writer's block. Because when you look at writer's block, you go, well, what is it really? And it's just the inability to seem to move forward. And oftentimes it's because we're looking at it from the wrong angle. DM Scotty, do you ever find you get creator's block, DM's block, and you go, oh, I don't know where to go with this. I like the beginning,
totally,
or I like this.
Totally. But what I find is my subconscious is always working on it, right? So I'll start it, I'll get it going, I'll get the ideas, the kind of the basic ideas going, and then my subconscious is working through what the details are, and I find that if I try to push it, I have a really hard time getting it down. But if I let it percolate for a while, maybe a day or two, then I've got it just comes to me, and I'm like, wow, this is a great idea. Another thing which you can find, I think, will really help is if you have some kind of germs of ideas, but you're not really satisfied with them, bang them off other creative people. Because that's what Gareth and I do when we create the North Road and the Quest Givers modules. We bounce ideas off of each other until we get a great idea, and we're both like, "That's a fantastic idea," So find somebody creative that you can bounce those ideas off, and they might think of something you didn't think of. Maybe there's that little thing you need that really changes the idea, that makes it from good to awesome. And I think that can really help writer's block.
Without a doubt, I completely agree, and I think we try to foster that as well. Do you have a Discord, DM Scotty?
Do I have a what?
A Discord channel, server, as they call them.
I do not, no.
Okay, then I don't feel bad about talking about mine.
Yeah, go ahead.
So on our Discord channel, it's discord.gg/greatgm, we actually have a section where people can go in and they can pitch their ideas to one another, and you will get commentary from everywhere, and people give good ideas. I've popped in there every now and again. Someone said, oh, I've got this block, or I've got this idea, but I don't know what to do with it. And people drop in thoughts all the time that I look at and I go, that's brilliant. Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. That's also brilliant. We're going to do them all. To try and get them all in there, because it works so well. So anyway, next question. Next question. Cicely S or Circly S, I'm not entirely sure, says, one main question. I'm trying to find a V20 group to play in, unsure of how long to look before giving up. R/LAFG looking for group. There are many more players than GMs. I can't drive some limited online play. Okay, so Circly S, V20. Do you mean a D20 group? V20? Have you heard of a system V20?
I was going to ask, what is that?
No. Okay. So just to clarify, before we jump into that answer, Cicely S or Circly S, please. V20 or D20, perhaps you meant D20. I would always suggest that you check out rpgtablefinder.com. That is the app that we made specifically for you guys. It's free to use. Go and create a profile and then type up the game that you're looking for, and it will try and find you people that's online and in your local areas too, if that's something that you are specifically looking for. So just come back to us on that one. Joshua Karen says, what's your opinion on homebrew campaigns based off a story or a game? Okay, well, firstly, I advocate almost always a homebrew game. I don't use settings. What do you, DM Scotty, what do you use?
I do like homebrews. I do run D&D modules though, so I've run in Sword Coast and all that kind of thing. But it's almost like a homebrew though. It's weird because it's almost like a homebrew because my players don't really know they don't know all the history of D&D. They don't know all the backstory of D&D. So I can really make up anything I want, right? So if I want to change anything in that setting, it's not a problem. No one's going to call me out on it, right? So
Right.
I kind of have that freedom going on. So I guess it is a homebrew. I'll use Waterdeep and all the other stuff, but they don't know all these specific details. So that's also, they didn't know all the D&D monsters, which was great, because they were, they didn't come from the background that I did, so that was fun. But yeah, I think, in a certain extent, don't be afraid. Even if it is a setting, don't be afraid to like put as much of your ideas in there as you want, and change as much as you want, because it's your game with the players. You're creating your own place, your own world, whether it comes from Star Wars or whatever. You're creating your own thing. So I would say, go with your instincts as far as like, and if the players are enjoying it, yeah, there you go.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, that's all what it's all about.
And I will confess, my biggest fear at the moment is running the Descent into Avernus game, which is steeped in lore. It's steeped in lore, and I'm running it for Dungeons and Dragons themselves. It's the creators have said, you will run this game for us, and I said, I don't know the lore. I have never run any modules in any of their settings before, because I always homebrew. And I cheat horribly. Anyone who's watched the streams know I just go, that's a great setting. So I'm going to set mine 500 years before theirs so that every name can change because history, right? But at the same time, it's also a conscious choice. It's a choice of saying, okay, well, I like the setting. How do I tweak it? How do I change it? And what's an interesting story to come in? With Descent into Avernus, I was also very specifically looking for a story that not everybody else was going to be telling, because that's hit the market like a ton of bricks. I mean, everyone's doing streams on it, which is great. It's lovely. And it's a great system. So, yes. All right, next question. James Tension says, what dates is the Descent into Avernus going to go onto YouTube? So, D&D usually loads it up onto YouTube today or tomorrow. So, oh wait, hang on a moment. On Tuesday or Wednesday for US viewers. Usually it goes up on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Every Monday we get an email from their head of social media, I suppose, and all the live streams and stuff. And she says, right, give us all your write-ups and stuff so we can put it up onto YouTube. So it should be should be Tuesday or Wednesday this week, and then it will come out in October, the first week of October on my channel. So there we are. Have a look for that. It was a very interesting opening, I must admit. Right, more questions. We've got 3 minutes before we're going to move on to something exciting, creative writing, just to give you a heads up. Infinite Wanderer says, what possibilities do you see in an oracle or diviner who can only divine the future whilst drunk or high? Well, traditionally, and I want to say this, that's how it used to work. The oracles of Delphi, it was sulfur dioxide poisoning, I believe. Lots of the shamans in the Amazon jungles, it's narcotic plants. I know in Africa it's a certain type of smoke and drink mixture. So that's traditionally how it works. But how do you express that? DM Scotty, any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the player. Some players really like to role play and get into it. Others might just say, okay, I imbue this drug and I sweave a little bit and then I start saying the prophecy. It's like, it's how much do they want to get into it? How comfortable are they playing someone who's on some kind of drug, or in this kind of trance where they're swaying and being that way, or or whatever. So I would say the comfort level of the player. Let the player dictate that.
Yeah, I think so. I do know that it can be an irritation as the dungeon master or the game master when the characters have got drunk. You impose penalties on them, but they still continue to try and go on the mission and do things whilst drunk, and then start doing silly things because they're drunk. And arguably that's possibly what they would be doing, without a doubt. But at the same time, you go, well, yes, why don't you just sleep it off and come back tomorrow when you're sober? With regards to the Oracle, I would always say that that hallucinogen or whatever it is that they wanted to take in to induce this vision. The vision happens, and again, traditionally, this is just sort of looking purely at the narrative, at the stories. Once the vision had been spoken out aloud, so it might be spoken slurry or high-pitched or whatever the thing is doing, but once it's been spoken, the oracle then drops out of that state and is almost unaffected by all of the stuff that had happened before. So I wouldn't impose upon them they now have to play as if they are on drugs for the next 12 hours or 24 hours or until a long rest, because it can get very disruptive. And I know that doesn't necessarily work, but
I love that idea. That's a great idea, actually, that they actually drop out of that stupor.
Yeah, and usually they don't remember what they said. You know, because it's not them, they're channeling these otherworldly spirits and stuff. So, yeah, right. I think that's something that I would.
It's like the best of both worlds, I think.
I think so. Yeah. But yes, it is. As you said, though, it really is about the player. If you can trust the player, then let them go for it. Right. It is 1:30, and so that means hold your questions. Hold your questions, please. There are so many of them. I'm just looking at them, going, yeah, we ain't got enough time. We need to go back about 3 weeks in order to catch up. All right, so we hold your questions, and there's some interesting ones talking about Tyranids and 40K and Star Wars is being bandied about as well. Very exciting. All these kinds of things. Okay, so creative writing challenge this week, because we have DM Scotty on our channel, giving us some awesome answers. Every week, or mostly every week, you're creating stuff and you're crafting stuff and you're painting stuff specifically. So that means you're choosing colors. So today's creative writing challenge is based on color. Now, the way that the creative writing challenge works is I will give you the challenge. You then think about it, mull it over a little bit in your heads, and then you write the answer into chat. So you're limited to a short little sentence or 3 to try and express your opinions. We then will look at those answers and we'll talk about them, we'll discuss them in the stream and unpack whether you got it right, whether you can look for alternatives or add on to make it stronger or better. Why would you want to do something like this? All it does is it adds into your arsenal as a storyteller, as a narrator, as a dungeon master, as a games master, a little extra tool that the next time you're running your game, you can call back this creative writing moment and go, oh yes, color. We spoke about color and the importance of color, and I'm going to now include that in my description of the scene. If it makes your scene better, well, brilliant. That's the point of this channel, is how to be a great GM, and that's part of how we do it. Talking about writer's block, this is also one of those avenues that you can take where just stop thinking about the plot and start thinking about the color. Color has a lot of different meanings, and one of the exciting things about being in Japan is their meanings are very different to the Western world. Where we see certain colors as meaning certain things, they don't mean it here. A big thing, for example, and this is just one that pops out all the time, is the LGBT rainbow flag, which almost universally, I thought anyway, represented an LGBT space. So if you saw a store or a space that had that flag flying there, generally meant that it was an LGBT friendly space. In Japan, it still just means a rainbow. And so you will see it everywhere and you go, oh, is that an LGBT? No, it's not. It's just a space using some cool colors to represent that space. Masculinity is not necessarily blue colors. Pinks, purples, mauves, it doesn't matter here in Japan. Anything goes. They do have some sacred colors, which we'll talk a little about. So now, creative writing challenge before I spend too much time talking about color and color theory. It is, you need to describe a room within your environment, within your setting, in terms of its color. And we need to be able to determine the nature of the room's owner. So by giving us the colors of the room, we need to know, well, we need to be able to understand what the person who inhabits that room is all about. So if I look at my YouTube studio here, it's green, and that's because there are green screens everywhere. And that's it. So it's just green. It's very boring. Green, and then that's it. So try and express a room to express the character of the individual living in that room so that we can guess their mood, their attitude, their alignment, if you want to go that way. But yes, definitely something to think about. How do you choose color? Whilst you guys think about your room and your descriptor, Scotty, how do you choose color?
Now that's an interesting question, because not only am I always not always choosing color just in the imagination, I'm actually choosing color, literal color, on my terrain that I make for my game. And that the gray kind of stone can get really boring, in a game. So you want to kind of break it up with different colors. Like I've used sandstone, and I'll use like kind of greenish stone or bluish stone. Like I did kind of a cavern where I had ruins in it, and I made the ruins. Uh, there was a green dragon down there, so I made the ruins like a green stone, and to kind of get the feel. There was an enormous green, like emerald spider down there, and so I had all this kind of green imagery. Plants, these vines and things growing down there. So all this kind of green color and imagery to reinforce, that this was a dragon's lair, and get that feeling, of the green of it. I've done things where I did a thing where the players went to this demi plane, and it was like a Yanti temple that had been plunged into this Arctic landscape. So I had the sandstone color of the temple, because it was in a more arid climate, mixed with like blues and ice and that kind of thing, that I used to reinforce the chill, the cold, of the place. So yeah, those colors, I feel really work. And I did a video recently where I did lighting. I've been doing a lot of lighting for my table. In my game table, I have an LED strip that runs around the table. It's a sunken surface, and I can change the colors of that strip. So that really helps. If it's a cold place, I'll turn it blue. If it's the Dragon's Cave, I'll turn it green, and that kind of thing. So that can really help reinforce the theme, not just of a feeling per se, but what is there, what's inhabiting that place.
Absolutely, I think it's fascinating to think about that, and also to think about the contrasting colors of the sandstone with the ice.
Yeah, that was really nice. Yeah,
and blue in particular. With ice, you could go, well, it's blue, or it's white, or actually it's transparent. It's a specific choice that one is making. I see that nobody has put anything in the chat except for Cameronev, who has written a room of no particular color. I would challenge you, sir, or madam, or however you identify, that a room of no particular color must have some color. But yes, as I like to point out on the channel, even writing that first sentence of a room of no particular color, or just blue, as Roman Rorder wrote, it's a start. And from there we can move forward, as opposed to not having anything written down. So there we are. Think about it a little bit more. We're going to go back to questions whilst you guys mull over the creative writing. If you need more space to write, discord.gg/greatgm is where you can do that. Xander Green, Suden coming in there. Okay. Suden writes, some of these, I recognize them as color names, but I haven't got a clue. Cerulean? Incarnadine? Viridian? I know Viridian, it's green. Amber is that sort of wonderful lead. Incarnadine? Incarnates? Or carnates are gemstones, garnets as well, but carnadine, I want to say, is a reddish color. What color would you guess, Scotty, or do you know incarnadine?
I don't know for sure, but that's what I would guess.
Right.
Like some shade of red.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that. I love it. Whenever the eyes rest of the colors do not so much bounce light off as draw the eye inwards, hinting at hidden depths, hidden meanings. Absolutely. And I like the different names and things. Xander the Green says, vibrant yellows and reds dance across the livery portrayed on the walls, foretelling the tale of generations of prosperity and well-fortune. Ornate armory stands at the ready within the corners. Yes, vibrant yellows and reds. Red's a very opulent color. Vibrant and yellow, of course, is the color of Her Majesty the Queen, as well as the Emperor of Japan. And there was a major political moment when the two came together, both wearing the same color. It was an issue where their aides had to figure out who was going to change, because they both couldn't be seen representing the same in the same color. So how do you tell the Emperor of Japan or Her Majesty the Queen of England. Excuse me, can you put a different jacket on, please? Anyway, yes, it was.
Which one are you going to tell to put the different jacket on?
Right, absolutely. Especially since yellow was the official color of the Emperor, and the Queen just liked yellow at that specific. She was in a yellow phase, but it was a failing on behalf of the cultural attaché to not have mentioned that. So there we are. Right, Toldich for Worcester says, a question for Guy and Scotty and the chat in total. System design, what are your thoughts in regards to moving combat rounds closer toward real time where actions equipment have their own speeds and alter the initiative? I'll tell you my answer. Scotty, what do you think?
I'm less worried about kind of a reality feel and more the dramatic feel of combat. So, I don't worry about trying to make it a simulation as much as exciting in the game world itself. So I'm not a simulationist, I guess. I'm more of, a storyteller. So that doesn't necessarily appeal to me. What do you say, Guy?
So I want to say exactly what you said. Yes. It is always, for me, it's always about the story. Having said that, though, second edition definitely had that. Second edition, you had initiative modifiers for the different types of weapons. I will always remember my character. He was a crazy wizard build, stupid wizard build, and he could wield a claymore, which, because of its size and damage output, it was always last to act. It was so heavy to wield and to maneuver around the battlefield, it was last to act. Those were in the days, though, when wizards literally had one spell a day, and that spell did 1d4 damage. And then they had to use a dagger or something like that. So I said, no, I want to use a claymore. I'm going to be a militant mage. You had that type of build back in those days. And so daggers were faster than short swords, and certain swords were faster than others. It kind of made some sense. When you start to get into why we have so many different designs of medieval weaponry, some were designed to be faster and slower. It is a simulationist situation that you get yourselves into, and suddenly magic starts to have a weighting to it. How long does it take to cast this spell or that spell? So it does add in a whole chunk of rules and things that suddenly your combat is not as quick as it could be, all in exchange for taking into account the different types of weaponry. I can see why they dropped it, because it speeds up combat. I certainly see the appeal of bringing it back, but I'm not sure. I think it depends on the bunch of players that you're playing with. Catherine Bischoff,
for you and your group, do it. Yeah. If you're in your group like it, do it, Of course.
Correct. Catherine Bishop says, it was a beautiful golden grain wood, vibrant with the life of the tree the room was built into. My eyes ached to see filth so thick it hid the floor. Bones and tufts of smelly grey were an insult. Interesting. I like it. So it's a beautiful golden wooden tree, vibrant with life, but there's bones all around it. I'm thinking the tree eats people. That's what I get from that. I love it.
And I like that dichotomy of like this tree of life, but then there's death surround. What is it symbolically? What does that mean?
Exactly. I like it. Sudian is here to educate us. Cerulean. I think that's pronounced cerulean, is blue, cerulean blue, and incarnadine is red. Viridian is green, courtesy of Stephen R. Donaldson, says Sudan. So there we go. Right, I'm going to skip down to the bottom again because we've got more questions there. How are we doing for time? All right, before we go, we've got 2 minutes, so I'm going to do another question. Xander the Green says, question for both options, or both opinions, on a non-lethal character in a group of murder hobos, or just in general. Do you have murder hobos at your table?
No, I really don't. I'm pretty brutal with encounters, so the players will get as much information as they can. They'll figure, they'll get as much information as they can before they fight an enemy and this kind of thing. Also, if they murder hobo, they'll pay for it. They'll pay for it, not necessarily in the game wise, like people coming after them, but I'll make them feel guilty. if you got in a fight with the innkeeper and burned down the inn, then his daughter runs up to you and says, "Why did you kill my daddy? You burned your," what I'm saying? It's like, make them feel like crap. Make them, and I do that all the time in my games. If my players, try to do that kind of, shady stuff, it'll come back to bite them.
I like that. I think we should run a game together at some stage.
Definitely.
So non-lethal characters in a group of militants. What has happened there is there's been a miscommunication in terms of the character creation process. Session 0 clearly didn't happen, or when it did happen, it wasn't looked at as an issue, and now it has become an issue. There is no reason why you cannot have a non-lethal character in a group of players who are particularly violent. That non-lethal character will keep those violent characters alive, perhaps, or provide support in some kind of way. Maybe it's in research or in detectiving, or perhaps they are detectoring, I should say, or what is the act of investigation? Brain. There are ways and means for non-lethals to be of value to the group if the group is a violent group. The DM, however, should also be looking at it going, okay, well, I do have these different types of characters. I need to make sure my adventures accommodate as such. So whilst they're fighting, this person can go and do something of value. And not just ignore them and say, well, you didn't build a fighter character, so you're just going to sit there and be quiet. I think that there should be a balance that comes in, and I think it should definitely come in for taking those sort of things into account. Now, before we go any further, I will come back to the questions because there's some good ones here. Questions about Saltmarsh and Avernus and Braxia, so we're going to come into that one. We'll look at some other things. Before we do that, I want to give another call out, this time to a different Kickstarter that's busy running. I showed it to DM Scotty before the show, and he's like, well, that's a great thing in terms of the card size. What am I talking about? I'm talking about these things, which I'll share the link now. So these are, these are monster cards. Now, these are monster cards. This is the actual size of the monster cards. So I think it's an A5 for those of us who use the British system. Is it a postcard size? I know the Americans use a different size system. Anyway, it's an A5.
It looks about that size.
It's a nice big size. Yeah, it's a postcard size without a doubt. Nice big bold colors. They sent me two as a sample sort of thing. The back, I'm not going to do too much on this. The Kickstarter video goes on to it a bit more in detail. Nice big bold numbers, the armor class at the top, hit points at the top. What I do like is they've got things where they talk about appearance. Completely shaved, complex braiding, 1d6 fake gold rings, nose ring many times, nose broken many times, I should say. Missing ear or teeth, deep scars from battle, blind in one eye, always sweaty, missing 1d10 figures, this is for the goblins, starved, ribs showing, old and wrinkled. So I like that they've added that in. They've also added in things like clan markings, teeth filed to points, jewelry made of bones, costumed with hides to look like animals, teeth coated with black, skeletal tattoos, oversized lip, nose, or ear piercings, scalps removed, tongues cut to be forked, transdermal implants, some really interesting stuff here. And then quirks: drooling, lustful, aggressive, quick to join winning side, distracted, earnest, punch drunk, clean cut, always hungry. Anyway, so they're really cool. I'm going to take you over to the Kickstarter so you can have a look at it. It is now on your screen. Monster Cards D&D 5th edition reference cards. And there's a whole video they talk about it, and they are very close to their goal as well. They're about $600 or so Canadian dollars away. And they talk about the cards, the design of the cards, and how easy it is. And they kind of give you a write-up of what's in that card as well. So yes, they're really useful. I look at it, I primarily run stuff online, and so most of the stats and things are a click away. They're really easy to get hold of, so it's not a problem whatsoever. But when you're sitting around the table, yes, do you write out those monster stats into your DMG? Do you from the Monsters Manual, I should say, or from whatever system that you might be using. These are specifically Dungeons and Dragons cards. They are very specific to that. What these guys are saying is, sure, go through your list, go through the stuff that you're looking for, pull out the cards that you need, and then as that encounter comes up, shuffle through your card deck. The monsters have all got very specific colors, so you can quite clearly see them. Oh, you're fighting bugbears? Cool. I now pull out the bugbears card, and I've got all of their stats and stuff on the back, plus then quirks and names and special traits and things. I think that's quite nice. I have to admit.
Yeah, that's valuable. That's valuable stuff.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I particularly appreciate that. Now, full disclosure, if you use this reference link, which I will post up, they will know that you came from the YouTube channel, which makes them happy and makes us happy, because they get to see that you saw them here. So I posted it up in the chat. It will go through. Hopefully. There we go. All right, it's gone through. Yeah, so monsters and things, just very, very quickly, how do you decide on what monsters to include, Scotty? You've obviously, I mean, you talked about the dragon lair. You talked about a spider. What was the... how did you design that? How did you come up with that very quickly?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, there's a couple ways you can approach it. You can kind of think about the monsters you want to have first, and then do the environments to fit around that, or you can kind of think of the environment first and then start filling it with things. So I get a lot of inspiration from the miniatures that I have. Yes. So someone sent me you know, because like it might say use this in the module. Nothing makes you use that monster if you don't have that miniature. You could always substitute another miniature for it, or if you often what I find is more that I want something more thematically appropriate for the space, that all the monsters kind of, there's a reason they're there, that makes sense. So I always try to have thematically appropriate monsters. So I'm often changing out monsters from modules and that kind of thing. But yeah, so you could do both ways. You could do both ways. But like I get a lot of, like I said, I get a lot of inspiration from my miniatures. So, you know, if I have miniatures, yeah, I'll look at the miniatures, and I'll actually think of encounters from looking at the miniatures.
Oh, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, there's some questions that have been coming through a couple of times now, and I have missed them. I've sort of seen them, and then before I get to ask them, they've moved on. Turkey Sloth says, asking this week because I work early mornings, and there goes the question again before I can even ask it out. And I don't know if I will be at work next week, Tuesday, going right into combat next session, because we ended early last time. Suggestions. I am co-GM and player. Ooh, interesting one in terms of going straight into combat. Combat and I are always... I don't like it to last too long, because it's in most systems, and I haven't yet come across a system where combat is not so much based on opposed roles and things. There's a few systems where it's described and it's based on certain things, but generally it's adversarial roles, and that can get very dull very quickly. So I think that the biggest thing going straight into combat is do a recap from last week first, so that people remember what's going on. But I would say, okay, everyone roll initiative. That would be the first words out of my mouth. Let them all panic, roll initiative, and then say, as you spot the terror in front of you, you think back and then you recap. So just get them on the edge of their seats right off the bat. That would be something that you could possibly look at. Scotty, any suggestions from your side, launching straight into combat?
You know, it can be fun to start games right in combat, or start a combat immediately, because it kind of gets the players, you know, excited. It gets their blood pumping, you know, and that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know if I have anything specific, you know, that I do when I start with a combat. I really like your idea of rolling the initiative die and then having the recap, you know, before before you get into it. So it's, you know, it gets them excited, and they're remembering what led them up to this point. Like how it's kind of like in a movie where, like, how did I get to this point? You know, and now we're here. So I really like that idea. But yeah, I don't really necessarily have anything specific to add.
Honourable 596 says, are your Saltmarsh and Avernus games taking place in Braxia? If so, what videos of yours would one suggest for learning more about Braxia? Braxia is my homebrew setting, and it's a yes and no. It's taking place in the Saltmarsh map, so that's the Azure Sea from Season 1. Definitely, we saw Saltmarsh in Episode 1 of Avernus. They've gone into Avernus. Next week on the show, you're going to see the map of Avernus, which Kaora drew for me. You can already see it on the website, greatgamemaster.com. They are linked, but only very superficially linked, and they can become more linked. This was my world building approach to Braxia, was that I drew out space, I drew out continents and things, I dropped down some city names, I randomly put races where I kind of thought the geography looked most suited for them, and then the players evolved it and grew it. And so if you look at the Azure Sea, Saltmarsh is there. The Pit of Golgur is actually repeated from the Saltmarsh map into the Avernus map. And that was a conscious decision to link the two together. But more than that, there isn't a huge amount. There is a link on the website. I would have to go looking for that. So if you ask it in the adventures of, it's in the Discord channel, so discord.gg/greatgm. Under Adventures of the Windswift, there's a channel in there called Adventures of the Windswift. If you jump in there and say, hey, where can I learn more about Braxia? The guys there, they're super fans of the channel, of that particular session that I used to run as well. They will hit you up with those links straight away, because there are a couple of videos that you can look at on that one. Will they tie in with Saltmarsh and that sort of thing? Not really. That video was recorded 3 years ago, so it did not anticipate that we would need Saltmarsh. 4 minutes left. 4 minutes left. So, last few questions. I'm just looking for big.
Oh, I had something to mention that I really wanted to mention. I loved this was a little while back, but I loved when you made an adventure on your channel. You made it while the people were watching. You wrote the adventure, and then you ran it for several groups. At least it was at least 2 groups. Was it more than that?
No, it was just the 2 groups, I think.
I love that. I love seeing you write the adventure, and then how it actually played out with the players. And it was different with both groups, of course.
It was.
And I really found that fascinating. I'm like, that is a genius idea. Seeing you do that is a really helpful technique, I think, for DMs to learn, to write adventures, how to run the adventure, how adventures, how you thought when you wrote it, how it was going to go, and how it really really went in the game. So, how you have to think about, modifying your adventure to fit the players, to fit what's happening, to fit the consequences of their actions. So, I just wanted to say I've always been a fan of that. I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was great, and I love watching those. I really did. If you guys haven't seen those, you should go back and watch them.
Yes, I'm trying to remember. That was a long time ago.
It was the elf who was deceiving the people on the ship. They were on the ship.
That's right.
The shipwreck, and then
it was interesting to see that, as you say, play out, because it was the emphasis in the one group shifted ever so slightly, and it was a totally different experience to the other group. So
exactly,
always fun. All right, we've got 2 minutes left. Thank you, Suden, for sharing the link in the Twitch channel. I'm going to copy that. This is for that beautiful map that Kaora did for us. So I've put that into chat. We're going to take one last question, and the winner of that is... Oh, and here goes the update. The screen now updates. Caleb Miller says, any dastardly ideas for devil contracts with the release of Descent into Avernus? Have you ever had devil contracts in your games, Scotty?
That is such a great role-playing opportunity. I've got something similar to that, because I've got in my group, I'm actually playing the Horde of the Dragon Queen, And I've homebrewed a lot of it. A lot of the game, because I want to take the players to 20. It only goes to 17, which seems kind of weird to me. Why not just take them to 20? So I'm taking them to 20. I've added a lot of content, but I had one player who wanted to play an evil warlock, and I was like, I'm not a fan of that, but I knew the players could handle it. And how I run my game is I don't pass notes and hide stuff. When when stuff happens, it's like a show. You see what happens to all the characters. So every player is seeing what's going on with the evil character, right? And that's really fun for them, because it's really boring if you keep taking a player aside and telling them secret stuff and they never get to know what it is. So their characters have to find this stuff out. They know the stuff, but the characters have to find the stuff out. So it's fun, trying to, and they're really good about role playing that and everything. So I've got that going with my current group, because basically the devil that the warlock worships is trying to circumvent the summoning of Tiamat to summon himself into the material plane, so and take over, and then the warlock is promised to be his lieutenant, his supreme agent, on Earth, or on the world. So it's going to be interesting, and I have no idea what's going to happen. I don't know if he'll decide not to do it, or the characters will try to kill him, I don't at the end. Because how I've run it is to keep them from killing each other, essentially, is they need each other. Like they each need each other. So he can't like keep sabotaging the group, because he needs them to get to that point where he can do what he's supposed to do. So that's one good way you can do that without having the players at each other's throats. Well, you can have them at each other's throats role-playing wise, but you don't want them killing each other, right?
Yes. You want them
so
to get
that's one way
there.
you can do it.
I love it.
Another thing.
Oh, yes, sorry. No, go for it.
I was going to say, another thing I did in the game was I had a wizard's contract, and so it wasn't a demon's contract, but it was a wizard's contract, and this patron offered them a lot of money and said, okay, you have to sign the wizard's contract. You'll essentially be cursed if you break this contract. And so it ended up they were getting an artifact for the bad guy, but they had signed this wizard contract, so they couldn't, they didn't know what would happen if they didn't. They didn't immediately find out it was the bad guy, but then they eventually found out. But that's an interesting way you can use those kind of contracts.
Absolutely.
In your game.
Absolutely. And I think the fundamental, the basic block to start with is, what does the devil or whoever is creating the contract, what do they actually want? I use it in my show. What do you truly desire? Lucifer, a lot of people picked up on that. Yes. What do they want? And it would never be, I want you to do this for me and you do that for me. That's an exchange. That's open and honest. That's what angels do. That's what I tried to point out in the show. Devils, it's, this is what I'm letting you think I want, but your actions will actually result in something else, and that's obfuscated. Yes, Scotty, go for it.
I'm sorry, and the fun part of that is getting the players to agree, like not making them do it, enticing them to do it, so they agree. You know what I'm saying? That's where the fun comes from. If you make them do it, it's not. They haven't really decided to put themselves in this situation. But if they decide, okay, we're going to put ourselves in this situation, that's always way more fun than forcing them to do something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We have definitely come to the end of today's show. We're a little bit over. Scotty, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an absolute blast. We'll get you on again. Yes, so there have been some questions about the Nautical Campaigns book. It is, as I said, it's finished being written. It's in Word document. We are taking it and translating it into layout and that sort of thing. However, there is going to be a big announcement next week. Anybody who has already pre-ordered it on our website, you will be getting an email shortly with regards to this entire thing. People have read the book and they have said they want more in terms of artwork. And we've said, well, artwork costs a fortune. It really does. And it should. Artists are incredibly talented people. And it takes time to make art. So we are going to be doing something with that book. It will delay its release a little bit. We're now looking end of November perhaps, but hopefully all that it will do is make it a much better product. You can already pre-order it on the website greatgamemaster.com for nautical campaigns. It is there. There's 27 unique ships plus a whole revamped system for ship combat. All that kind of stuff is in there. Lots of cool things. It is 5th edition based. That's simply because it was for Ghosts of Saltmarsh. It was supposed to be a supplement, and it ended up becoming its own thing, simply because as we were writing, we were like, oh, but we need rules for sinking. Oh, we need rules for this. Oh, we need rules for that. We need rules for hiring crew and all that kind of stuff. So yes, so we're looking to make that product as brilliant, as wonderful as we possibly can, so that it does become the definitive work in terms of that. So watch this space. Quite possibly it will actually be launched on this space, and yeah, we'll definitely keep you updated on that. If you have pre-ordered, watch out for an email as well as we update you on that. Until next time, however, from me and Scotty and the Web Goblin. I see there's some thanks out to him, of course. We do love the Web Goblin. To all of you, I wish you the very happiest of gaming. Goodbye.